is the new shop, quote unquote new to us, and we're gonna go check it out a little bit. So it's open on the front. It's about 30 foot wide, so it's a pretty good sized shop. It's a little bit of a pole barn style with big trusses, and they actually have tongue and groove lap on the underside of the ceiling. It's not just trusses, so that's kind of cool. Safety first. As we go inside, it's kind of a interesting thing because there's a platform and it immediately goes down like 3 steps. So let's turn some lights on here. So they've got some nice fluorescent lights. It's all fir siding on the inside, kind of has this barn door, and there's a little loading platform outside, which is cool. There's a little upstairs here, which we go up, and it's not the largest area, but it's still pretty good. They've got a couple windows and just a nice little open platform. Might have a kite there for us to play with here in the future. So going down the stairs, down this little loading dock. They left us a lot of miscellaneous offcuts, beadboards, straight grain fir, some just all kinds of miscellaneous stuff, which is cool. There's an old wood stove, but it's not so old that it doesn't have like blowers in the bottom. So we might get that running someday. Nice stereo system. Looks like we've got a whale and a grinder, some miscellaneous hand tools, a bunch of hardware, stuff like that there. And we've got a double bit axe that looks like somebody was trying to replace the handle on very poorly. So that might be kind of a fun project to take home and try out. And then we also have a single axe, which again looks like somebody was trying to work on. So I think I'm going to take these home to our other house while we can't be here and replace the handles. All right, let's check that out. We are back home now. The 2 axes that I found in the shop at the other house have been brought back with us. I didn't really have a chance to look at them at all until just slightly now. One, I kind of have a little bit of an idea what's going on with it. The other one I don't. It's still pretty rusty. My history with axes, this was kind of like the only axe that I've ever had previously, and this was just, you know, a $20, $25 hardware store axe. It had this kind of black plasticized stippled coating on the whole thing, probably to keep it from rusting. So I took quite a while, filed it down, got the cheeks narrowed up a little bit so it wasn't quite as dull of a wedge. Took a lot of that black plastic off of it, shaved or sanded all the lacquer off the handle or varnish, and put boiled linseed oil on it and got it pretty well saturated. So it's very sharp and it's got a fairly nice handle now, but it is still a cheap axe, which means it's got cheap steel. So that was kind of my history with axes up until now. So anytime I find something that resembles an axe, you know, whether we're wandering through an antique store or a junk store or thrift store or whatever, I always kind of keep my eyes open and think maybe I'll find that cool axe head somewhere. Usually the handles are destroyed, so people throw them away at that point. So we'll take a look at this first one. This first axe here, it's hefty. It's got a fairly straight handle. It looks like an oak handle possibly. It's kind of got depressions in it like oak, but it might be hickory or maple. I'm not honestly sure. The previous owner, I think they just wrapped the handle with a bunch of tie wire to protect it from overstrikes, which seem to have occurred quite a bit since the handle's all chewed up right here. The head is loose. I could probably wiggle it off right now, but for those of you who may know more about axes than I do, it's got this bluish paint on it. Whatever. And then it's got an emblem that I could actually make out, and it has a crown and it says GBA. And so I googled that and, you know, tried to figure out what it was, and this turns out to be a Grundfos Brook axe, which is one of the better axes out there. They're made in Sweden. This one, from what I can tell, the blue paint and that particular logo is they stopped making that combination in, I believe, 1982. I may be wrong, but that's what I found. So it's also got another little bit of a label here embossed or printed in there, but that's the only markings that I can see right now. Typically, underneath the crown logo here on this side, there would be a Made in Sweden or something like that stamped into the side of the axe head. So when we get this taken apart, get it cleaned up and polished up and looking good, we'll probably get a new handle for it, and we'll hopefully be able to see a little bit more info about it. This other axe, this is a double bit axe, or it's got a blade on both ends. As far as I know, typically one end would be kind of the utility side and the other side would be a much sharper actual chopping side for the woodsmen that were out there. Somebody tried to rehandle it and they bought a $10.99 axe handle somewhere. It's busted on one end. They tried driving it on and you can see the wood's all slivered. They didn't fit it very well. And it's probably only about 2/3 of the way in, and that's not even with a wedge. So I've looked at it as best I can tell. I can't see any stamping on it or names or anything as of now, so it could be a very inexpensive, cheap double bit axe head, or it could be something good and it's just covered with rust or pitted or something. So it'll still be fun to clean it up, polish it up, sharpen it up, put a new handle on it, and it still probably should be fine to use. They're a little bit hairy, you know, thinking about this double bit axe, but I think that'll be fun, a fun project to work on. So these are the kinds of things to do over the winter when you can't be outside a lot. So I'm going to wire wheel these a little bit, maybe a little bit of sandpaper, see if I can kind of clean up the areas where a mark would be and see if we can't get a little bit better idea. Maybe this is something cool too. We've done our little exploratory grind and sand and look at these two axes. Yeah, as far as things go, this appears to be a Graham First Brooks axe. You can just barely see the made over here that would have been stamped across the bottom, and from what I've seen, a lot of these don't have really super clean Made in Sweden stamped in there. I hit it with a file just a little bit to see. The steel still feels pretty hard compared to this other double bit axe. So it might not have been taken to a bench grinder too much, although it does unfortunately look like it might have been. So hopefully the edge, the temper hasn't been destroyed from overheating. And then on the other side here, it's got a 4 stamped into it and then something else, I don't know, an A or something, and a little bit of a block there. So this one definitely will be a cool one to fix up. And then the double bit here, I looked and looked and it's got really heavy pitting. You know, it could have been left out in the forest by loggers for I don't know how long, and found it could have been just sitting in a shop and found it could be a piece of junk, who knows. As best I can tell, I don't see any maker's mark or indication or any type of marking on it. Again, I hit this one with a file quickly. It seemed to file pretty well or easily, so it might be a lot softer steel or has lost its temper. I know I've seen people say that you stick these in a fire and let the fire burn the handle out of the head if it's stuck in there. So maybe they did that at some point in time to get the old head off or the old handle out of the head, and it lost its temper because they didn't do it correctly. The only thing that I see, it doesn't look like, at least to me, and I'm not an expert again, it doesn't look like it was a forged type of axe head where they drove a wedge through the center when it was being forged to actually split this, or blacksmith the two sides together. I guess you'll see a seam at the top if it's that way. And then there are 3 grooves on each inside face, running at least what I can see the length vertically here. So that may indicate something, an age or a date or something of what type of axe it is. But anyways, this was a pretty cool find. The only weird thing is, off the double bit axe, the iron rust is really a red color. I don't know, to me it looks redder, more of a reddish clay color than what I'm used to for rust. So maybe that has to do with the metallurgical makeup of the particular steel in the axe head. So we will have another video in the series where we delve into it more. I'll do a little bit more research, figure out what I need to do, how I should do it, and we'll go from there. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I've seen some videos though. So anyways, this is Dan with Dan Ceramakers. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, comment, and get out there and do something.